What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Lexi Johnson, and this is my co-host, Brett Johnson, my co-host and husband, I should say. If you're watching this on YouTube, Brett and I unintentionally are dressed as reciprocals this morning. We look like human Oreos, so that's pretty cute. But this week, we are going to talk about something we all love to hate, but we also kind of want to put a spin on it of why comparison can be valuable to you. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and everything that comparison can bring to a personal life and a professional life, ways that we often frame it in our minds are for the negative, and I'm certainly, in that camp to some extent, but comparison can also be used in very beneficial ways, I think, to an extent, and if you frame it in in the mind correctly, and if you utilize it. So tell me a little bit about your experience with comparison in a negative aspect. Like, you don't have to give exact examples, obviously, but like, in what ways has comparison, I think that sometimes we only think about, the classic saying, comparison's the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. And I certainly have used that to a point where I'm like, well, then comparison offers me absolutely no benefit. But tell me about a little bit of comparison in your life or an experience that you've had.
So whenever I was younger, not that I'm super old at this point, but whenever I was like in high school.
You have a birthday coming up.
I do. I'm turning the big 28. So whenever I was like in high school, this is what I'm considering younger at this point. I recall being extremely insecure and doubting just the way that I am, my uniqueness, whatever you want to call it. And I remember comparing myself to people that I looked up to a lot and finding myself trying to mimic what they were doing. And I think that a lot of kids in that age group do that because for whatever reason, and whenever we're in high school, we place so much doubt on ourselves. And I was very guilty of comparing myself to people that I looked up to. And I think that there's value, in trying to, as long as you have good role models, in trying to mimic the good things that they do. But I did it to the extent where I wasn't being myself, or I didn't feel like I was being myself. And I recall just feeling off because you can't replicate somebody else's personality and the way they act, the way they talk, because you're not them. And you just have to keep in mind that person is probably looking up to somebody else, and they were probably in the same boat that you were at some point. So each individual is very unique in their own way, and you have to accept the fact that you're not going to be the exact same as somebody else that you look up to, and embrace that and embrace being different.
And the good things that come from that. I've had similar experiences multiple times in that. And one of them just being when I started my business, thinking about so much of it is on social media. And with social media, you are just overstimulated with content by people in your same field. So here I am following every fitness influencer, every person in the health and wellness space. And I'm thinking, okay, like this person does really well at this person does really well here. Maybe I could just become this, melting pot of all of these, successful people and kind of pick and choose what I want from that. But that would only go so far because that's exhausting to pretend to be something you're not. Mm-hmm. And it also is very unauthentic. And I think that at the place I am now in branding myself and presenting myself on social media, one of the biggest things, and something that I can't recommend enough to someone that is starting to do that, and I'm still early on in the game, like I've been on Instagram for over a decade, and it took me over a decade to get more than like 4,000 followers, and then it kind of gained traction. So that's a slight edge principle in itself, but something that I couldn't recommend enough is to lean into your uniqueness, your authenticity, because no one else has that. Someone had told me once, like, that is your superpower. You're not going to be XYZ just like that person, but that's okay because there's already a spot in the market for them. Like there's already a place in this little niche world for that sort of uniqueness, but there isn't one yet for yours. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really empowering. It also allows you to focus on your strengths that you have. But it's important to look at what people are doing, what successful people that have gone before you are doing, and sort of, I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think that to a personal point, comparison can be really detrimental, just because if you are ever replicating someone's personality, again, that's only going to last so long, because it's exhausting, it's inauthentic, and it's only a matter of time until the other shoe drops and people are going to realize that that's not really you. And it's going to end up hurting you more than anything. But I think to a professional point, looking at those that have gone before you and seeing what they've done well, like I said before, you don't need to reinvent the wheel if it's already done in a successful way once, but you can add your own spin to it. So I think that modeling sometimes can be really useful in a comparative way. Just knowing that you don't have to start from scratch every single time, but it's a very fine line to draw, and one that you need to kind of reevaluate on a term-to-term basis.
Modeling is in modeling yourself after somebody else, or...
Well, I think I think if you ever come to a point where you're modeling yourself, then that's when comparison becomes detrimental. But if you can model a system, that's why I kind of differentiate between like a personal and a professional level. So if you can model a system that works really well, and then kind of plug and play your specific needs, your specific business or whatever, I think that is more helpful. Because if Henry Ford invented the, what's the name?
An automotive vehicle. Yeah, Model
Well, I was
T.
talking about the...
the assembly line?
The assembly line. You didn't have to reinvent that now the assembly line is used for a ton of different industries.
Right.
But you just kind of plug and play what your specific needs are for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if you ever start modeling yourself, like I had said before, then it's going to be very inauthentic, and that's very transparent to the people that are receiving it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's value in it, and then there's the side of it where, the cliche comparison is the thief of joy. There's the negative side of it. And I guess I have a different spin on it at this point in my life, because I'm more secure in myself, knowing that it's okay to not be somebody else, because I went through that phase. And not to say that I still don't, have insecurities and find myself looking to, modify myself in small ways. But I think it's a little more healthy at this point. But where it used to be something that it basically just exacerbated the issue, I was becoming more insecure, because then I felt like I didn't know how to respond in certain situations if I didn't know how somebody else would respond. Yeah. Because that's not you. You have to be you. And I've taken on a different level of confidence because of it. But at this point, I view comparison as a tool rather than, to my detriment. And I guess comparison at this point in my life is I use it on more of a professional level than I do like on a personal level. Because if you're able to look and see what somebody else is doing better than you, or be able to observe the way that somebody else is doing something and having success with it, you don't have. I'm not saying that you go mirror somebody's business model and try to copycat what they're doing, because you're going to get found out real quick if you try to do that. But there is something to be said for using somebody as a mentor and using the practice. If they're telling you how they're winning, and if they're giving you the tools in their tool belt to how they're succeeding, then you can take those and apply it to your own life. And I think that's a healthy version of comparison, being able to look at and see where somebody's at in their life, and seeing that you like where they're at and you'd like to go in that same direction in your own way, and pick and choose what you like that they're doing that you could apply in your own life.
And I think that to your point, when you had said like you're a much more secure version than you were previously, when it comes to comparison, you do it more so on a professional level and not so much a personal level. I think that also that's a testament to your maturity, because comparison comes from insecurity and lack of self-esteem and just not knowing who you are. And in maturing into who you are and understanding that this is who I am and this is what I bring to the table, that those have their own unique strengths. I think that that's really empowering, and it also puts you into a position to capitalize on them. When you understand and know exactly who you are and what you bring to the table, then you have all the confidence in the world to move forward and be able to look at what someone else is doing really well and take the emotion out of it and say, okay, this person is succeeding. What can I take away from their experience? What can I withdraw and implement into my own life? But if you're constantly looking at that person and saying, well, he or she got to this point, that sucks. They beat me to that. If they're doing that, then like that is already taken. There's no room for my success. I think that comparison is often looked at with envy so much, and that's where it gets kind of poisonous to you. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about like just on a very personal level. This is week 8 of our 8-week challenge, our New Year's challenge. And New Year's resolution in the fitness industry is very just fitness is seasonal anyway, but that's one that really energizes people. It gets people excited to embark on a fitness journey. But as we know, the adherence is often not there. So, mid-January, early February, a lot of people have fallen off on that. And now that we're getting to the last week of this challenge, there are people that are showing their progress and they're really excited. They're really proud because they've been putting in these steps and they've been establishing these habits for the past 8 weeks, that it's exciting and they want to share those wins. And I had mentioned when I was going live in the group just over the past weekend, and I kind of just preemptively talked about that. I'm like, this week there's going to be a lot of successes shared, and how you respond to those successes is going to be very telling of your own moving forward, because you might have been one of the ones that dropped off late January. You might have not made it to February when it comes to the New Year's resolutions that you were gung-ho about January 1. But when you see those other people's successes, how you respond in that knee jerk is going to be very telling of what comes of you in the next 8 weeks and beyond. Mm-hmm. So understanding that when someone else shares their success, it's not pie. There's room for everyone to succeed at the table if you're willing to take those steps to implement it. And if you see someone else that's succeeding, it should be empowering and saying, well, if she can do it, then I for sure can do it. Mm-hmm. If that mom of 3 that works full-time can do it, then this mom of 3 that works full-time can also do it. And I think that using comparison in that way is an empowering, all right, if she can do it, I can do it, rather than, well, if she can do it, then, or if she did it, then there's no room for me to do it.
Yeah. Using it as inspiration rather than seeing it as something that, where you are trying to tear somebody down, or try to make an excuse for how they did it and how you were not able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, we get insecure, and we get just insecure would be a good overarching word to use for it. When we see someone else that was in the exact same position as us at one point, if you started this journey January 1st and someone else just posted all of the progress they've made, and you're looking at your progress and stacking it up to theirs and thinking, well, like, you're listing every excuse, that's very telling of what's going to come of your own success and how limited it'll be, because you have that limitation on yourself, and you have that knee jerk to create excuses and create outs for yourself. Where if you can recognize, like, damn, she worked her ass off these past 8 weeks, that's inspiring. That means that I can start right now, and I can do that in 8 weeks, whether there's money dangling or a prize or a challenge or a giveaway or whatever that really instantly gets us incentivized. Whether that's in place or not, you can see that time is going to elapse regardless, and someone else just did it. So that means you can do it right now. You can get started this very moment.
Mm-hmm. So on a personal level for you, whenever you started your business, you've been very open about the fact that you were very nervous, insecure, you battled imposter syndrome, and I would venture to say that you were comparing yourself on a more regular basis to people than you are at this point in your business. So would you say that there's any practices that you've adopted along the way since you started your business, and where you are now? What are your thoughts there?
I think that I for sure battled that imposter syndrome, and I was thinking, it's really funny to think about now. So Hannah Jones and Claire Thomas are friends of mine now, but years ago, when I was just starting my, not even before I started my business, or before I started my business, but when I was just starting introducing fitness to my Instagram, to my social media, it was something I was so scared of.
Back in the day, whenever you were contemplating whether or not to put it on your existing Instagram, you were wanting to create a separate account.
Yeah, I didn't want to bother anyone that currently followed me.
You were worried about offending your current followers.
Yeah.
You were so concerned about what they would think.
Yeah, and I would only post on my story because I knew that they would disappear within 24 hours. And even then, they very rarely made it all 24 hours. I would delete them pretty shortly, because God forbid someone see them, even though that's the entire point of posting something, for someone else to see it.
It's wild how far you've come.
It is. And now I'll bang out a video within seconds of
being
awake with sleep in my eyes. And I'm like, yep, 100,000 people need to see this right now.
You used to make me leave the room before you would record something.
Yeah.
I couldn't be standing in the same room while you were recording a video of yourself, and you would get mad. Like, you would actually,
because
like,
it's so
I was like, babe, you got
vulnerable.
this. Like, I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. You do you, and you would make me physically leave the room.
Yeah, it made me so nervous, and I was so nitpicky, and I would watch that video and I'd be like, there's no way my mouth moves like that. I can't let anyone see the way my mouth moves when I talk. And it's the same way that I had talked to you about a TikTok video I had watched, and this woman was talking about how she used to stress so much about if she was in a group and they would go out and they would take photos, she would have to approve all the photos that people were going to post. And I remember these conversations in college. I was in a sorority, so I took a lot of group pictures with a lot of girls, and there would be so many people where they would be like, nope, that picture cannot go up. Do not post that picture. If you post it, do not tag me, and we are not talking if you do. Because XYZ, I look fat in that picture. I don't like the way that my smile looks. My hair is blowing. That one strand of hair that's over my collarbone cannot be seen by the world. Things like that. And this woman in the video, she was like, I started so many useless fights over that. I stressed so much over that. But everyone else sees you operating throughout the world. They see you moving, having facial expressions, flattering and unflattering faces, and the only reason that we are expecting to be picture perfect in every single photo is because we curate our photos that way, and we only show the ones that are extremely flattering, the ones that are our highlight reel, that the only ones that make it to the gram are the ones that we want to. And she said it's kind of silly because everyone sees those other little glimpses of the way that your face moves when you are surprised or excited or disgusted or just experiencing life. And it's put in very simple terms, but it's like, wow, why would we stress over that? Yeah. But anyway, back to what I was saying about your question. When I had first started posting on Instagram, I follow a bunch of Instagram fitness people in that world, and Hannah and Claire were two that I really looked up to. And I remember having a conversation with someone, and I was like, well, she's doing this, and I just wanted to be them so badly. I wanted to be just like them, because in my eyes, like, what they posted was the law. I thought it was so cool. And then I remember having a conversation, and that person was like, well, you're never going to be Hannah Jones. You're never going to be Claire Thomas. And that's a good thing. And I respect those women so much. Now I'm able to call them friends, which is really cool. But the cool thing about that is that they have their own thing and I have mine. And if I'm constantly emulating someone else, then one, I'm never going to succeed to a point beyond wherever they are. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm always just modeling and trying to emulate, I'm mimicking someone else, then I have to wait for them to move before I move. And there are so many times when I can see people that are just starting out and they're kind of like taking a lead from something I do or something that someone else that I follow does. And it's very transparent from this side of things of when someone is being authentic and trying to grow themselves and show themselves in fullness, or when they're taking a lead from someone and they're constantly one step behind.
Yeah. And from a business perspective, as you're talking about this, it becomes very apparent that, one, if you're trying to emulate a woman in the fitness space, and you're a woman, then you're competing for the same audience. And two, if you're trying to be that other person, then you're competing for their segment of that audience. So basically, you're cornering yourself into a even smaller share of the audience and competing directly, or essentially trying to compete directly for the existing person's audience versus going out and capturing your own unique audience, because people will naturally gravitate to your uniqueness, because they will, you're never going to appeal to 100% of the population out there. If you try to please everybody, I am extremely guilty of this. I still have to preach this to myself, so don't take this as me being the expert. But I know that this is the truth, and the way that everybody should operate is that not 100% of the population ever is going to like one person. Everybody is going to have their own opinion, and everybody's going to like or dislike something for whatever reason. And you have to accept that, and you have to make sure that the 50% of the people that do love you, like, that's who you're trying to capture. That's who you're talking to, because the other 50%, they're going to blow you off anyway. They're going to talk shit on you no matter what. You just have to accept that. That's just the way of the world. But it's the 50% that loves you because you are you and you're authentic. That's your audience.
Yeah. And leaning into uncompromising authenticity is something that has helped me so much, because I used to think that I started this as a dental hygienist, so I was already behind. I was not able to dedicate my full attention and time and energy towards this thing. But then in sharing that was appealing to people that were also navigating that realm with me. They were working full time and exercising. And then I talked about my experience with my dad and watching him undergo a very extreme lifestyle change, and how I got to see firsthand and be a part of that transformation, and watch him lose 130 pounds, and his relationships just completely blossom. His work was so much better. And I used to think, well, these people probably came from like Olympic athletes, so they're already ahead of me. And I'm not. Like, I'm coming from someone that's navigating a lifestyle change. Like, that puts me one step back, but it doesn't at all. That has created so much opportunity for conversation and relatability, to the point where I can say, I have never been extremely overweight, so I don't know to an extent what that's like, but I do know what it's like to look at someone that you care about so deeply that needs to make a change, and that you want it for them, but you can't do it for them. And I can relate to a lot of people in your life, likely. So I think that leaning into those things that sometimes we discredit and dismiss as things holding us back, and just understanding that those are the uniqueness about us, and that's where we can really capitalize and flourish and take advantage of. Mm-hmm.
And I would say that, circling back to the original question, that you at this point in your life are much more secure in yourself, in your uniqueness, and not trying to replicate, or not to say that you were trying to replicate, but comparing yourself constantly to somebody else that you looked up to, because that really is, the thief of joy. Whenever you're so insecure in yourself that you can't operate being yourself and be happy, or because you're constantly assessing what you're doing and how it's not like what somebody else is doing. So I was just listening to a podcast with Tim Grover on Andy's podcast, and Tim Grover, if you don't know who Tim Grover is an extremely, extremely accomplished, I guess I don't know what all of his degrees are, but he was like Michael Jordan's trainer. He's also been a lot of other famous athletes' trainers, Kobe Bryant being one of them, Dwayne Wade. I think he's worked with LeBron in some capacity at some point. Anyway. But he's worked with some incredible athletes. And whenever he was on the podcast, I was picking up on the fact that like he isn't just a speaker, like a well-rounded speaker to the point where he doesn't stutter and stammer every now and then. And I myself have been judging how I speak on the podcast. And whenever you don't get to listen to yourself, I know that you're pretty well versed with how you sound at this point.
I definitely don't listen to myself though.
Yeah. I'm the king of critiquing myself. And
yeah, more I have walked in on Brett watching our YouTube and basically it like game film, taking little notes. And
yeah, I'm trying to find ways to improve and get better myself. And also, I have plans in the future for how we're going to improve the podcast overall. But the point being that you don't have to be perfect to get going on something, and you don't have to be perfect anyway in order to captivate an audience. Like, you are unique in your own way, and Tim Grover has done incredible things, arguably the most successful physical trainer in the world, with who he's worked with and the athletes that he has helped get to where they were. And he still isn't, a great speaker in terms of like not stuttering and stammering. I'm not saying that he couldn't still deliver a much better speech than I could. I know that he could. But the fact of the matter is, I listen to myself talk and I start to pick apart, how I talk.
It's
the speed of my cadence. And if I put punctuation where it should be or where it shouldn't be, if I take, if my voice tone changes enough, because I have a very monotone voice. So point being, just be who you are, and you're going to get better at something as you do it. And as you do it, then you're going to become more comfortable in the whole process, and you're going to stop thinking about the way somebody else does something, and you're just going to perfect your own craft, and you'll become less and less susceptible to that comparison.
I also think that comparison can bring a lot of resentment. They kind of go hand in hand when you're looking at it from an envious point. And in the books that I'm reading recently, and I listen to a lot of podcasts that talk about just the mindset and the ways that you frame things. And it sounds kind of hokey pokey when you're saying like what you're putting out into the universe, you're going to receive. But if you're nitpicking,
I used to think that was hokey pokey, but now I'm a 100% believer in
I
that.
did too. And the way, what we're kind of explaining is like, if you are, wishing someone to fail, someone that is succeeding currently and you want them to fail, then basically like the universe, I sound so, or I feel so funny saying that, but that's exactly what we mean.
Sounds a little bit hippie.
Yeah, but anyway, if you're wishing failure on someone, the universe isn't just separating that to that unique person. You're just saying the universe is receiving that as Lexi does not like success. She does not want to succeed. She wants failure for that person, so she must want failure for herself and for everyone else too. Where it's not like, no, I just wanted that one person to fail, not me or my friends or my family or whatever. But that's not how it's received.
Because you're telling the universe that you hate success. It doesn't matter if it's one person, if it's everybody.
Yeah, it's putting out into the world the same way that I say you need to be intentional about your optimism. You need to be intentionally talking to yourself and saying it's going to be a great day. This is going to be an amazing meeting. I'm going to deliver on this speech. I'm going to do fantastic on this sales pitch. I'm going to bring the house down with my presentation. I'm going to ace this test. If you continually say those things, then you're going to put yourself into a position to create it. And when you're looking at someone and you're tearing them down and you're critiquing every single instance for them, not only are you developing resentment against someone that is modeling a good path to success and showing you that it can be done, when it could be taken as, or it should be taken as, very inspiring and empowering, but you're also telling the universe that you don't want that sort of success, that you don't want that, all the good things that are happening for that person because you don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to share the book that you're reading that you're getting? That's a pretty top of mind subject for you because of the book you're reading.
Yeah, it's Secrets of the Millionaire's Mind, or The Millionaire Mind. It's by T. Harv Eker.
And a lot of it is more principles of mentality versus, principles of practicing certain, things in your life. It's all mentality type talk. And that's what she's hitting on a lot here is you have to, if you frame things as negative, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to give an example that I thought was cool. So this book was written in the early 2000s by, a man, and he was watching one of Oprah's shows, and Oprah at that time was interviewing Halle Berry, and Halle Berry had just signed like a record-breaking contract for a woman or a black woman. I'm not sure what the stipulations of that contract were or what caused it to be record-breaking, but she had just signed a massive movie contract, and he said, as I was watching that on TV, I was thinking, well, like, she just robbed them. Like, she took way too much for what the work she was doing, all that stuff. And he said, I caught myself in that instance. So I guess earlier when I was saying knee jerk, I should say not the knee jerk necessarily. It should be the corrective thought that you have after that, because it's okay to relearn and to unlearn those things that are very innate to us right now.
And you have to train yourself to not have that knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, so what I was following that with is he said, I caught myself talking negatively because Halle Berry was seeing success and she just had signed this huge record-breaking contract. And I said out loud, like, you go, girl. You should have taken more money. You earned that. You worked so hard for that. You busted your ass for that money. And he said I audibly was like chanting to my TV, like cheering her on, because you're telling the universe that you don't want that in return. You don't want record-breaking contracts. You don't want ceiling-breaking success or anything like that, because it doesn't know the difference between a direct target and you speaking it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that at this point, and that it bleeds into everything else. Because if you wish that, if you see somebody succeeding and you wish that they weren't, then you're likely going to have a negative mentality going into a lot of different aspects of your life. And I think that's, it sounds so hokey pokey to say that, the universe is bringing this all back to you and what you put out. I do think that there's a spiritual element to that if you're religious at all, but the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. I think that what you put out there is what you receive in return. And if you're willing to go out of your way to cheer others on and be happy for other people and be grateful for what you have and what you're going to achieve in the future because you have belief in what you're going to be, then good things are going to happen to you. It doesn't mean the bad things won't happen to you along the way, because bad things happen to everybody. But you have to frame it in your mind as, is life happening to you or is life happening for you? That's a very common thing that you'll hear once you get into the personal development world, is people that are unsuccessful view life as happening to them. People that are successful view life as happening for them.
Yep. I had a question, but I kind of got lost when you were talking. I'm blanking right now. You want to pick up my slack?
Sure. Well, I think just to round out the whole topic of conversation, if you're somebody who suffers from comparison in a negative aspect, I would encourage you to just look at yourself in the mirror and be happy for what you have, because you're the only one who has it. There's nobody else in the world that can do exactly what you do, how you do it. And I suffered from that a lot whenever I was younger. And not to say, again, I just was pretty open about the fact that I still am judgmental about the new things that I'm doing and trying to improve upon, one being this podcast. And along the way, I'm going to critique my mindset on it, and I'm going to accept my uniqueness. And that's, it's an evolution. You're always figuring out ways to get better at making comparison a positive thing and not a negative thing.
And it's a moment to moment thing, and I think that it applies differently on different terms. But you had mentioned just looking at yourself in the mirror, but we have every second of history of ourselves. We have this vantage point of every failure we've ever had, of every misstep, of every mistake we've made. And we only really have that highlight reel that we had talked about. And we see this montage of success and celebrations and milestones from other people. So we just kind of assume that that's what their life is because that's what we're shown. But remember that they also have that same baggage, and they have it in a unique way to them that they have turned into a positive, or that they have surpassed that adversity. So know that we have that viewpoint of our own success, or that our own failures, or our own limitations, and we're writing that off as a reason as we can't succeed. But everyone has their own stuff.
Yeah.
We've all got baggage. We all have
I think
obstacles. But remember that you're viewing someone else's success and highlight reel, and you're looking at all of your behind the scenes footage.
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother topic in itself that we've discussed as being a podcast, is viewing success from the outside. And just like what you were saying, if you don't know what somebody else has gone through, you don't get to see the adversity that they've faced, and most of the time, all you really know about are the wins. And every single person on the planet is constantly battling something, big or small. Everybody's constantly facing something. So never assume that a person that you even look up to as a mentor doesn't have their own struggles, because they do. Everybody has their own struggles. And if you compare yourself to them thinking, well, they look at them, they don't have to battle the things that I have to battle. Sure, you're not going to get to know about it because they're not going to advertise whenever they're having their super personal issues.
And if you're only highlighting your own adversities and battles, you're putting that out there. You're putting your obstacles and your negatives out into the world, rather than thinking, this is what I'm going to do about it. This is my uniqueness. This is my own authenticity that I can succeed on, and I can impact and inspire others with. If you're only thinking about the negatives that you bring, then you're only going to bring more negatives. If you're saving for a rainy day, there's going to be more rainy days.
Yeah, for sure. What you put out there is going to come back to you.
Yeah, so I think that comparison is a tightrope walk for sure, and there are benefits and negatives, but at the end of the day, it's just how you use it and how you frame it in your mind. And so much of principles for success in personal and professional, and we by no means are there yet, but so much of it just depends on how you frame it in your mind and how you talk to yourself about those things. Because I'm a firm believer, if you don't intentionally talk to yourself, you're going to end up listening to yourself, and that's that knee-jerk biased mindset and mentality.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a wrap.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you are someone that had any good takeaways, or felt like someone that could benefit from us talking about comparison or anything of that nature, we'd love if you shared the show. If you have any comments, put them in the YouTube section. But thanks so much.